Yalla! The main thing we were looking for back in 2012 was we wanted to build something. And we knew it had to be meaningful and it had to be big.
There was also a need to create inspiration. There was also a need to create confidence and self-belief that these big things can also be done from here.
We learned to dream big. Never in our wildest dreams have really thought of us being where we are today and having this impact on the ecosystem.
Everyone was moving in the right direction. There was no looking back.
Vision is going to keep evolving, but the purpose will remain the same: to simplify lives and build an awesome organization that inspires. And if we can simplify the lives of people, a lot of that potential can be put to better use.
That positive impact will spread, and ultimately this can really change the fabric of society.
So I grew up in a middle-class family in Pakistan. You can't take water for granted, you can't take electricity for granted. But as soon as I went to the US, you just see a different way of living. When I graduated from college, I had a sense of responsibility towards the region. I've seen the hardship. There is some giving back that should happen. I had met Magnus, and Magnus had just come back from his surgery.
About 11 years ago, I was at the conference and all of a sudden it went black. And it turned out that I had had an aneurysm or an AVM that had popped. I was sort of told that it's a little bit strange that you're still alive and you better go and fix this quickly because any change in your blood pressure and you could actually just be sort of game over. But I recovered faster than anyone would expect. So that's when I realized that there has to be more to life. I did conclude my purpose was about building something and it had to be meaningful. And then I also said, if I'm going to do something meaningful, then let's do something big and meaningful.
My first impression of Magnus was this guy is so sincere and someone that I felt could be a friend for a long, long time to come.
I think my first impression was that this is a really, really crazy guy. I've never met anyone that has a higher ratio of ambition level to humility.
When Magnus came and said, hey, we'd love to build something big and meaningful, there was only $1 billion business in Pakistan, which felt embarrassing and of course shocking. It just ignited something in me which said, let's buckle up and do it together.
In everything we did from the day one, when we sat down and wrote down our values on a piece of paper, it was so much more about the why and the how than the what.
So I actually went to the head of McKinsey in the Middle East to ask for a leave of absence. And he asked me, curiously, what ideas are you looking at? In the conversation, he mentioned, have you looked at ground transportation?
Being a consultant in the region in my prior life, I traveled a lot. Everywhere I had this one guy that I had met once. So you call him and you're like, Noshad, are you free? I'm in Doha airport. And he's like, I'm busy, but I'll send my brother or I'll send my cousin. And then if you're lucky, you get to your destination. It's probably an important meeting, so you have to be on time. You have no idea about locations. You have to haggle on the price. You get the little handwritten receipt that you don't even know what it says because it's in Arabic. So the whole experience was, quite choppy to say the least, right?
So when we came up with this idea of transportation, Magnus had a question mark. Like, I get a second chance in life, as he describes it, and you're asking me to build a platform that moves consultants around. But at least my perspective was, look, it's a big opportunity. There's a lot of potential in the region, and we can build something that can be very impactful over time.
He really cared about his home country. And he really saw an opportunity to create a lot of jobs.
I was more leaning towards big and Magnus was leaning towards impactful, and that's where the middle ground was found.
So when we started Kareem, it was on the first day of Ramadan in 2012. So it was a very special day, a very blessed day.
We forced ourselves to go live and do the first trip in 6 weeks, even if it meant that we were processing the entire trip manually.
So the first version of Kareem was essentially a very simple booking form. So when you put in your pickup address and your drop-off address and your timing, what actually happened on the back end was that we got an email with your booking. And that email went to a phone that had a very loud ringtone. We manually sent an SMS to the customer, your Kareem is on the way. We basically had to call these captains one by one. And mind you, back then we had no technology in the cars, so we had to manually guide the captains over the phone. From a customer experience, it looked relatively professional, but in the kitchen, it was a complete zoo.
Look, we didn't know anything about the transportation business, and what we learned from Captain Nasser and many people like him. Is he okay? Okay.
Back then, a captain or a driver was not necessarily considered on an equal basis as the passenger sitting in the back. In our view, captains are as important as pilots in a plane. They care for us and make sure we reach our destination safely.
इंटरव्यू के लिए बुलाया, हमारे और भी ड्राइवरों को बुलाया, मुझे भी बुलाया और हम लोगों ने सर मुदस्सर का बिहेवियर देखा और उनका वो देखा, हमने बिलीव किया। तो जब हम लोग होटल में खड़े रहते थे तो हमारा टाइम वेस्ट होता था, तो हम लोगों का काम इतना नहीं होता था।
With the first captain signed up, Kareem was growing up fast. In less than a year, Magnus and Mudassar hired their first colleagues and set up an office, which needed furniture.
So this is where we got all our furniture. You remember? I remember. You know, being from Sweden, my first idea was that of course we go to IKEA, they have cheap furniture. And you were like, what do you mean buying new furniture? Of course we're not going to buy new furniture. Yeah. And then I think we found this place somehow.
There was just a culture that we wanted to set in place, which was going to be frugal. We're going to do a business that has low margins, and just wanted to set the right tone from the beginning.
I think you had a much better understanding of that than I had at the time, but yes.
In the corporate world, especially the clients that we had to be extremely reliable. One screw up could basically mean that someone doesn't get to the airport or a client meeting on time that's worth millions and millions of dollars.
And not only were they corporate customers, but many of them were our friends from a previous life. So it would be a personal embarrassment. So this meant that we were really on top of every single booking, down to the little detail. It's a little stressful.
Uber was the biggest tech startup in the world, let alone in ride-hailing. Its arrival to Dubai less than a year after Kareem started was an existential threat.
There was definitely sort of a freak out.
A holy shit moment. Like, holy shit, you know. Uber clearly had an app that was quite well developed. They had technology. They also had a lot of money already in the bank. And they were basically out there to kill us. I remember being on the calls with captains. These captains were telling me that they're offering me so much money that I also need to look after my family.
It was said by some of the VC firms, if there's two companies you don't want to compete with, it is Amazon and it is Uber, because they are ruthless.
To say we had to hit the ground running is kind of an understatement, right?
And not know if we were going to survive or exist at all.
They would call all our captains, tell them to stop working with us explicitly by name.
It was the bad boy of tech that was entering our market.
Our investors were freaking out. And I think the only one that did not freak out was Mudassar.
Magnus and I said, let's time out. Let's see how we are going to compete and overcome this challenge.
We realized that we were not going to beat them at tech, but we could definitely beat them on the emotional side of things because we were from the market.
The region is different. And if we serve our customers and our captains with what they need here, that's what we should focus on. Let's not focus on competition. Let's not obsess about competition.
They forced us to raise our ambition level. We hired relatively junior people. They were actually doing decently well outside, ended up taking huge pay cuts because they really subscribed to Kareem's purpose in some shape or form and wanted to do good.
Wasn't excited about joining a startup, at least that's what I thought, until I met them. Got me super excited about their journey, and I think they're quite special people.
You could see before your eyes something being built, right? That's the difference.
They come on board, they take on the mission as theirs, and they are missionaries, not mercenaries. As our first expansion point, we picked Doha. Not because Doha was, larger than Saudi or Riyadh, but it was easy to get to. You could get visa on arrival, and the flight was cheap, and it was only 45 minutes.
So let's write the launch playbook. Then we take the challenge of going to Saudi, because we knew that the size of that opportunity, size of that market, was way larger than anything else in the region. As the organization grew, more decision-making had to be delegated.
The level of ownership that we had was like mind-blowing. I remember I used to suggest markets and almost want to launch the market and then inform Mudassir.
A lot of us had a lot of personal sacrifices. Probably got a bit too intense at some point, but it really got everyone to feel the fabric of things moving in a very tangible way.
We were very clear that the market that we had to be in was Saudi. Especially at that time, women were not able to drive in Saudi. So the opportunity and the problem was just way bigger than anything else. Now, how do you find the right talent in Saudi?
We got to know Abdullah over a couple of months of actually working together. He was running his startup and we were running our startups, and we were seeing each other at events, etc.
I believe at that point I was completely not interested. I just wanted to continue my startup. But then at some point, beyond the business pitch, I really wanted to understand, who is this guy? I just saw these people who are offering me to come on board, to do well and to do good at the same time. So I was completely sold from that moment.
Abdullah was invited to come on board as a co-founder, underscoring just how important it was to Kareem's future to get it right in Saudi Arabia.
It was a question of complete ownership on exactly the same terms as Mudassir and I had started.
One of our key advantages that we were agile, quick to actually implement cash in Saudi.
Customers were jumping on the service. In that year, we grew 10x. Then we grew 10x again. And then we grew 9x. So we're talking about 1,000x in 3 years. In a hockey stick growth like that, that made all the difference.
It wasn't just Saudi where Kareem's knowledge of the region kept them ahead of competition. Their focus on local problems meant they were rapidly trialing new approaches to meet local demands.
Pakistan was the most unique market where you could not just go to individuals owning a car and saying, come drive with us. So in the US, about 850 out of 1,000 people own a car. In Saudi, it's about 400. In Egypt, it's 50. In Pakistan, it's only 18. So here we had a long list of people who were interested in working with us, but they didn't have a car. And so here we were building out two databases. One of people interested in driving and one pool of people who were interested in buying a car and essentially hiring a captain and then partnering together to come and work with Kareem. We learned a lot and we learned to cater to different types of people.
So in Dubai, we came across this request of customers asking, especially the moms asking for baby seats.
In an ad hoc way, a captain might come in and pick up a car seat.
The captain would go back, serve the customer, come back to us.
Mudassir said to me one day, we could make this a service, right?
Maybe we can launch it tomorrow. And we were like, tomorrow? And he was like, yeah, tomorrow. We collected around 20 odd seats. And then we started going to different locations where we knew captains were saying, we're launching a service tomorrow. You have to keep this car seat in the boot.
We trained all the captains on how to alter the car seats because you have children of different sizes.
That's how the launch happened. Less than 24 hours. Kareem Kids now is one of the most preferred services in Dubai by the moms.
Kareem's rapid growth was also putting pressure on their tech. Systems designed to handle thousands of customers were now supporting millions as the service gained traction across the region. Small cracks became major events.
We ran our entire call center from Dubai Media City on the 28th floor. One day, we get this little notice slipped under the door
saying that there will be an electricity outage planned by the building because they were running through some maintenance. No electricity means no service, so we will have a proper downtime of not serving our customers and captains. What can we do? And then someone just said, like, should we borrow electricity from one of the plugs by the lift, where actually it's an emergency, and even if the light kind of goes off in the building, that switch might work.
We ran down, we bought every extension cord we could find, and we essentially moved all our call center systems into the hallway or through extension cords connected to where the elevators were.
To be honest, we were successful, and we only had a downtime of 5 minutes. None of the customers or captains knew that we were going through this crazy shit in the office, but I think this was the start of being bold, what actually meant in one of the values. Yeah, when we were in the office, someone knocks at the door, this is my card, I'm from CID. You've released this video. I was actually very shit scared on what's happening.
So Slingshot video had an incredible impact.
So one of our more crazy colleagues, Chris Eid, one of his ideas, which he kept secret until it sort of was live, was to make this video where we pretend to shoot someone in a slingshot from one big tower in Marina to another tower and miss it.
And we would do it unbranded. And the idea behind that was people would totally freak out.
And they told us, can you accompany us to the local police station? We want to investigate this case. We told them about the story that this is the first half of the video. The guy lands safely. And that's where they told us ASAP launch the second half of the video so that people don't panic and don't question what's happening.
It got millions of views.
Recently, I heard Elon Musk also commented on that video.
And it's funny, when we were fundraising, we actually showed it to our investors, potential investors, as a sign of how crazy we are.
Before the year was done, Kareem would make an even bigger announcement.
At a startup, I think there's an existential challenge, which is to survive. We knew what needs to be done. We needed to raise money or do a deal.
We had been recommended to go and meet Rakuten, the Japanese e-commerce giant, and they had their head office in Silicon Valley. True to our values of frugality, we of course fly economy. Our CFO, Ankur, he had rented the smallest car possible. Ankur would not qualify as a Kareem captain. His driving skills are absolutely atrocious. We go in for this pitch. Mudassir goes all in and tells a story about the region and how Kareem is going to be super successful in serving all these customers. Gratefully, that became the beginning of a wonderful partnership with Rakuten.
We called ourselves a unique camel, the first Middle East unicorn.
That public recognition, of course, feels good. But at the same time, this is really just an external signal.
Looking back, it feels big. But in that moment, it actually didn't feel so big to us.
When you're inside the company, you know all the things that are breaking or on the verge of breaking. And so you can see this external sort of recognition with a little bit of amusement.
We definitely celebrated it. We felt good about it.
I went around telling everyone, called my parents, saying, guys, we're $1 billion company, we're a unicorn.
We sat more or less in a
circle.
Yes. And we had some balloons and we had a cake.
Yeah.
And that was sort of like, okay, $1 billion, have some cake, and then get back to work.
We are always looking at the next challenge and the next frontier.
I think literally on the day after the announcement, because we said, let's not get all blinded by having $350 million in the bank, keep our heads down and keep doing the same thing.
Behind the scenes, the injection of capital only bought Kareem another 2.5 years of operation.
The culture and the aspired culture was always focused around frugality. We have to use every dollar in a way that we get the highest return and we can stretch this money in the longest for the longest possible time.
It was still the early days and the early beginning, and we just went back to our next ride.
The most significant thing that happened when we became a unicamel was really how the outside world perceived us. And most notably, talent. We found the amazing tech people all around the world that said, wow, you're actually doing this in the Middle East?
It's great to show the region as well, that it's possible. A lot of people actually started dreaming about building billion-dollar companies. It's not a dream, it's a reality.
As Kareem became part of daily life, governments across the region were questioning how the service should be regulated, or if it should exist at all.
Well, my first day was is a memorable one. Just a couple hours into trying to get a laptop and an email, one of my colleagues said, hey, there's a meeting with the RTA. This is your future role, so you should join me. The topic was, you guys are operating under no law right now, and this is not going to happen in Dubai. And I'm like, oh man, what did I just join?
It wasn't just in Dubai that Kareem was facing regulatory challenges. Authorities in Egypt, Pakistan, and Abu Dhabi were taking a more aggressive stance.
This guy basically told me, look, you'll be shut down.
10 of our captains were taken by the police. An hour later, 5 more, 4 more.
So the next meeting was more to say, let us show you what we've done elsewhere, and let us show you how we're different from what you think we are.
When we were standing in court at the Islamabad High Court, the gentleman from the Transport Authority kept talking about carriage laws. The honorable judge paused the hearing and said, they're doing flying taxis in the US, and here you are standing in my court and talking about carriage laws. go and work with these people, then go and meet lawmakers together and go create a new law.
Multiple people from Kareem would join in meetings with the government to really ensure that they understood who was behind this company and what their intentions were.
Everyone was talking about Kareem. Everyone was downloading the app. So if anything, it kind of helped build the brand and make everyone aware of the service that we were delivering.
Kareem's success with regulators led to something previously unimaginable, a groundbreaking partnership.
RTA has this vision that they need to further the well-being of people living in Dubai, and they're very ambitious about it. But they didn't have the tech, and we didn't have the cars. That is the first time that a partnership of this nature was made.
Hala is the first partnership in the world between a government and a private entity that operates and runs a ride-hailing business.
We built Hala with a symmetry to Kareem so that it could exist on its own, but it could exist within the Kareem ecosystem. Hala and Limos combined, we now deliver more than 3.2 million rides per month. So it was well worth it.
Ever since I at least joined the company, we wanted to start new things. There were a couple attempts that were made before. At that point, we decided that, let's go out, give this as much oxygen that this needs, and see what happens. And we started with food.
Restaurants also were going through that pivotal moment of completely having a shift in where their business is coming from, suddenly having to become really acquainted with going online. The first principle we said is we're in this for the long term. This is not to really short for short-term profitability or any of that. But we wanted to focus on really transforming that business to whatever would be relevant years down the line.
In a few months, it was clear that this is working out. Not only the food as a business, but the construct in which we're working. That's when we started loading new use cases under that umbrella. And within a span of a year and a half, we gave birth to Food First, then came Order Anything, then came Kareem Express, and then we gave birth to Grocery. So it was both a mix of a business decision, but more importantly, an operating realization that this is how we can incubate and fast-pace some of the ideas that we have. I think that is smack in line with what our purpose is.
Our goal is always to simplify people's lives. And so we're always trying to figure out different ways to achieve that goal. When it comes to mobility, I think Kareem Bike came at the right time. It's allowed a lot of people who don't have bikes to bring this form of leisure and exercise to their lives. And we are able to do it in many locations across the city. And I'm hoping in the next couple of months, we will have more than double the locations that exist today.
Despite the success, in the shadows, Kareem was a target.
This hack was something we never had before, and I hope we will never have again.
We definitely thought it could have been the end because we were extremely vulnerable.
We always felt like if there's a problem, we solve it and we move on. A risk like that can actually mean the end to everything we have built.
So it was early 2018. Someone messaged that they've hacked into our systems and they have access to our database. We must have called a few people to figure out how to respond, creating a war room where the right experts were there from different places, helping us understand how should we respond, how should we negotiate. We came out of it much wiser. But the one big realization that we had from it was that we had to grow up.
By that time, we were big, and our responsibility was tremendous. We had so many captains on the platform, we had our colleagues on the platform, we had so many investors behind us. Act like a huge tech company, which we were at that point. That was a huge learning for us.
Kareem emerged from the attack bruised, but wiser. They knew they were now big enough to be a target and had to work in a more sophisticated way.
Every new type of ride or every new city that we opened up, a whole new cultural, social, religious nuance popped up, and we had to sit back and say, okay, now how do we negotiate this?
We were very bullish about our mission. We wanted to simplify the lives of people wherever they exist in our region. I took it as a personal challenge to ensure that Kareem is actually in a lot of these markets. So I've started focusing more towards opening markets where no one else have dared to open. If there's no war happening, active war zone will be there.
In a city like Karachi, they have no choice but to take this horrendous form of public transport. So when Kareem sprung upon the scene, that air of freedom, that air of emancipation that it created, it was just so beautiful to watch.
Went to Iraq, Palestine, Sudan. I remember I was attending this conference, and I remember this old man coming to me and said, like, thank you from the bottom of my heart to you and Kareem. You put Iraq on the map. So as soon as you've launched, other companies are inspired and now actually knocking on our doors.
Saudi was the foundation of Kareem, showing the business model could work at scale and had a clear path to profitability. But in Saudi, 70% of Kareem's customers were women. Some questioned what would happen to Kareem if women were able to drive.
In Saudi, especially because women weren't able to drive at that time, everyone knew Kareem.
The Saudi before Kareem was a Saudi where 2.5 million women were not able to work just because of not having a proper transportation mode.
A lot of people asked us, especially as we were raising money, what happens when women can drive in Saudi? Would that be detrimental to the business? And our response always was, it is the right thing for the society, and we as Kareem, as an organization that wants to move the region forward, have to be on the right side of that decision.
A few minutes ago, a royal decree has been issued in Saudi Arabia giving women the right to drive.
When the decree came out in 2017, we're talking about Saudi where everybody I know was dreaming about that day, and then suddenly it was there.
There was such a hunger and such an eagerness to just jump on it. So I think it took us, half an hour?
Saying that we'll create X many Captina jobs in Saudi.
The decree was out at 9. At 10:30, the tweet was out with a ready-made video, which was so powerful and so genuine. It was even shown in the royal court. It went completely viral.
This was not planned from the top. This happened grassroots, and it happened because of passionate young people that were invested in their communities.
The business has continued, has grown since that moment. We have some women captains in Saudi, and we still have a lot of women customers in Saudi that still continue to use the service.
Kareem's people were encouraged to support their communities across all their markets. That meant when crisis hit, local teams could use the full weight of Kareem's resources to help.
The purpose and the mission of Kareem was so strong. So whenever something happens in the market, we were so quick to react.
There are many times where we sort of were pushing societal boundaries. The simple act of adding a small little button in the app that customers can donate to UNHCR. It's not us giving. Our customers became one of the largest donors within a very short part of time.
There was this fire in one of those buildings in Dubai Marina. We've dispatched as many captains as we can in the area to evacuate people free of charge. There has been a couple of incidents where blood was needed to be donated.
We learned that there had been a bomb blast in Lahore and a lot of people died and got injured. In an instant, everyone said, yes, we need to do a blood drive, but we need to make sure if our captains will stick. Not a single captain said no. Every single captain said, this is my duty, I'm going to do it. That day, I think, it was a very unfortunate day, but it was the day we got established in Pakistan. And I think that was the day our team understood what was our purpose.
Because we are in a position that we can, it is our role to play.
When the deal came out, became public, there were a lot of sound bites about what side are you on?
We spent many years almost driven by this notion of competition with Uber.
I would even wear black. That's how extreme things were.
A good portion of our mind space was about fighting that fight.
Everyone was like, no one was excited. Everyone was like shocked. We have to raise funds. We have to, it's the right direction for Kareem to grow and scale further. Why Uber?
We had a very different relationship with Uber prior to these discussions. Uber was a 4-letter word that was never used in Kareem. But the first approach from Uber actually came around the time that we raised the unicorn round. And we were feeling quite pumped and strong. So when that approach came, we rebuffed it and basically said, if you want to sell your regional business, we're happy to look at it, but we're not interested in selling Kareem. Around 2018, when we were about to embark on our next fundraise,
we had this thought that maybe we should go and speak to Uber as well, just to see what they think.
You know, our absolute ulterior motive was to ascertain what they might be willing to offer so that we can negotiate with, you know, the investors we were fundraising with and achieve a better outcome for ourselves.
So we go to meet Uber.
And somehow we found an Uber that had changed from what it had been before. Since Dara had come over, the approach and the discussions were a lot more constructive. There was a lot more respect in those discussions, to the point that when we shared with them our vision to become a super app in the region, they actually got quite excited. They said, we're happy to keep you fully independent, to continue pursuing this purpose. In fact, we'll fund this vision.
So I remember leaving that meeting feeling quite confused. And we're looking at each other and saying, no, this is a little weird, but you know, these are like good guys, and they really understand what we're trying to do.
The financial value was one part of it, and the ability to continue building out the vision of Kareem was another part of it. All of these were pretty big challenges. So until they all came together, it didn't necessarily feel like this was a transaction that was actually going to happen.
Over a couple of weeks and months of discussions, we came up with a model where Kareem could stay independent. Because for us, it was important to still have Kareem as an entity that can shine in the region and that can continue to inspire in the region.
What changed our mind was actually a discussion that we had with one of our investors, that if you continue to hang on to Kareem and not do this deal, you're actually going to be selfish. Because this deal with Uber for Kareem would be an incredible validation of the ecosystem in this region.
A very good job was done of explaining how this relationship with Uber would benefit the organization, benefit our colleagues, and benefit the region ultimately. That with these partners, we would have access to resources that would enable us really to superpower the next version of Kareem.
That deal will have a strong impact in that future. So I think it was done absolutely for the right reasons.
Uber has honored its promises, right from closing the transaction to like the last 2.5 years of keeping us independent. They've been a great parent company for us.
You know, this is the reason why we're investing, is because we believe in growth.
Positive story, a story that highlights the size of the opportunity in the region.
You can't underestimate the impact to the tech, the startup, whole ecosystem here. And it's hugely exciting across every element.
Definitely one of the biggest deals of the year. So everybody's super excited about how that's going to play out.
Kareem was riding on top of the world. But around the corner was something no one could see coming.
Countries imposed a 2-week lockdown to combat the spread of the coronavirus. Had been under a night curfew along with the rest of the United Arab Emirates.
March 2020 happened. By April, I think there was that sense across the globe of what next? What does that even mean?
And all of a sudden, everybody was asked to stay at home and no one was using Kareem anymore. And we had to stop our service.
We had to go through, reorganizations and cost savings and, really make sure that we could, that Kareem could survive through COVID.
Yeah, maybe worst day being at Kareem was maybe the day that we let a lot of our colleagues go. We've tried as much as possible. I remember I was on every single phone call, 60 or 70 of these calls. They understood that there's something bigger than me and them at stake, and we needed to preserve it and make sure that it lives through this crisis.
When COVID hit, it was a very short period of time that we had to transition people to working from home, and I'm talking like less than a week. What was incredible about that was the way that so many different people came together to make sure that for colleagues, we were setting them up for success. We had a lot of the infrastructure in place already. And actually what we realized was we had this really empowering and trust-based way of doing business. And that meant for us that pivot to work from home, although quick and stressful in terms of actually getting it organized, we were very well set up to make sure that the organization could continue and be productive and successful.
It always was the hardest on the captains. They had their bills to pay, and out of a sudden everybody was asked to stay at home. Even if we wanted, we weren't able to give them any means of income. We came together as a team and brainstormed how can we help them. And it was really moving to see how everybody rallied around this idea of building a captain's fund.
Many of our colleagues donated to the Captain Fund to ensure that they were taken care of at what we knew was going to be an incredibly difficult time for them. And all colleagues, includes our CEO, Mudassa, who very generously gave his salary as well, which was, I think, something that really resonated with many of us in the organization.
And even if that wasn't so much and we couldn't move so much with it, it was still fantastic to at least do what is in our hands.
COVID had seriously affected Kariim financially, and losing more than 30% of its workforce was a body blow to morale. But as lockdowns eased, a huge rise in delivery requests showed there was a light at the end of the tunnel.
Every testing and challenging situation is an opportunity. And while it sounds like a cliche, it was the case, right? Delivery in general, we started seeing that this is the right time for that use case to go up. We figured that while things are super turbulent and everything is up in the air, this is the time. We already wanted to be a super app. We were just looking for the right time.
Welcome to the Super App Launch Event!
So the purpose of Kariim from the beginning has been to simplify the lives of people. But we didn't know how we would simplify the lives of people beyond mobility.
The beauty of it, it will not all be operated by Kariim. We will enable and give other startups, whether they're ex-Kariimers or other entrepreneurs in our region, a chance for them to actually reach more customers.
We don't want to compete with them. We want to provide this as a platform for them to jump on and be successful. In a world of ever-increasing apps, ever-increasing use cases, how many apps are you going to download? How many times are you going to go through the identification process? How many times are you going to put your credit card on file? How many times are you going to get scared about what's going to happen to your credit card? Then there is a value component to it. Our customers who are loyal to us and who will use us more and more, we will give a lot more value to them through that. So I think between these two things, the argument or the case is pretty compelling.
The average person in our region still go through a lot of struggles on a daily basis. As far as I'm concerned, as a person, if they need any service that can simplify their lives, they should find it on Kariim. And it shouldn't be any service, it should be a great service.
I think this is the most important part of the transition, where the brand of Kariim changes from being a ride-hailing company to being a super app company. And what that journey means is going to be the challenge over these next few years, figuring out what is our DNA, what is our new DNA, how do we serve the region best. And we're finding that journey, and we're finding it with a significant amount of success. The obvious candidates are things like food, groceries, and then we get into a more subtle space, which is the secondary layer of services, e-commerce, B2B services. This is where it gets really, really exciting. And for me, I think the beauty in all of this is when the super app disappears, the tech itself disappears, and it becomes part of the fabric of our life.
The super app vision is an incredible manifestation of Kariim's purpose, through which now we can simplify the lives of people with everything that people need help in their lives. This region has 500 million people. We're still simplifying the lives of 1 million people on a daily basis. There is still 500x growth that is needed to simplify the lives of everyone in the region. So there's a lot of room to keep on growing.
So over the next decade, for sure, Kariim will still be true to our purpose and our values. What's also clear is that the vision will have expanded. Now, where exactly will it take us? I think that's for us to see.
The ultimate goal is to build an organization that outlasts all of us, to continue to impact more people's lives in the region. where we are, we're barely scratching the surface.
What we have at the moment for the next 5 to 10 years is a super app vision that defragments the region. You build your service on the Kareem super app that gives your service the last mile logistics, the payment capabilities, and that service can be easily available to customers across the region to make their lives simpler. There will be an emergence of 2 or 3 large technology platforms that will become, let's say, the Googles or the Amazons of the region. Kareem will become one of them. As long as you know where you're going, you focus on the next steps and have them open the next doors.